All right, welcome back, everyone. We're really diving deep today on this kind of new lunar era that we seem to be entering. It's more than just, a bunch of new missions happening. It's something bigger.
Yeah, and our sources this time, they go pretty deep, right? They're not just talking about the technical achievements, but really exploring, the philosophical implications of all this, how it changes our view of Earth, our place in the cosmos, and even the ethical challenges that come with, potentially actually living on another celestial body.
Yeah, and one thing that really jumped out at me was this idea that this new lunar era, it feels different from Apollo, right? Like expert, you were saying, our sources compare it to a sprint versus a marathon.
Exactly, Apollo, that was like this incredible burst of energy, a race to the moon, plant the flag, national pride, but this time it's about sustained presence, long-term thinking, a marathon, not a sprint.
So it's not just about, winning a race this time. It's about building something, right? Like maybe the first steps towards actually living off-world. And one of the big differences from Apollo is the role of private companies, right? Like you've got Firefly, SpaceX, Intuitive Machines, and they're all pushing the boundaries, often working alongside international partners, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, this collaboration is something we haven't really seen before on this scale. It brings a whole new dynamic to space exploration. You've got the innovation of private companies, the resources they bring to the table, mixed with the oversight and the experience of government agencies. It's a really interesting mix.
It does make you wonder, though, right? Like, can we harness this energy, this kind of new way of doing things in space? Can we do that and also avoid, repeating the mistakes of the past, like those colonial ventures that our sources keep bringing up?
Yeah, that's the big ethical challenge that comes up again and again in these sources. How do we ensure that this new lunar era benefits all of humanity, not just a select few? And how do we do it in a way that's sustainable and doesn't repeat, the mistakes of our past on Earth?
So it's not just about the technological hurdles, it's about the ethical ones too. But the sources also point to a more, optimistic side of all this, right? Like this idea of the moon becoming a resource hub.
Oh, absolutely. This concept of in-situ resource utilization, it's fascinating. Imagine using lunar resources to actually support our presence on the moon instead of having to haul everything from Earth, which is incredibly expensive and inefficient.
Yeah, like that lunar water ice everyone keeps talking about. That could really be a game changer, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we could use it for drinking water, for oxygen, even for rocket fuel. Think about it. It could make deep space travel much easier, much more sustainable. It's like setting up a lunar gas station, for missions further into the solar system.
Okay, so we're talking about water ice, but there's got to be other stuff on the moon too, right? Like other resources that we could potentially use.
Oh, there's tons of potential. Helium-3, for instance. That's something that gets a lot of attention. It could revolutionize energy production back here on Earth. And then there are rare earth elements, things that are essential for modern technology, for our phones, our computers, all those things that we rely on. We could find them on the moon as well.
Okay, but let's shift gears for a second, right? Let's talk about the philosophical side of all this. Like, remember that iconic Earthrise photo from Apollo 8? It really changed our perspective on our place in the universe. You know? Seeing Earth as this tiny, fragile blue marble just hanging there in the vastness of space. Now imagine actually living on the moon, looking back at our home world every night.
It's mind-blowing. I mean, trying to grasp the psychological and sociological impact of actually living on another celestial body, of seeing Earth from that distance, it's a whole new frontier of human experience.
I mean, would it give us a greater sense of global unity? Realizing that we're all sharing this one tiny planet? Or would it actually, exacerbate existing divisions? It's a question that deserves a lot more thought.
Yeah, it's a big one. And speaking of big questions, another one we have to talk about is planetary defense. Remember that asteroid that came close to Earth a few years back? Asteroid 2024 YR4 turned out to be harmless, luckily. But it was a good reminder that Earth isn't immune to threats from space.
It definitely makes you think, right? And one of our sources mentioned that the moon could actually play a crucial role in protecting us.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, right? Because the moon has low gravity and no atmosphere, it could be a really good platform for developing and deploying planetary defense systems. Like imagine telescopes for early detection of asteroids, or even deflection mechanisms, ways to nudge those asteroids away from Earth's path. The moon could become our first line of defense.
Wow, that's amazing. So the moon could be like our shield, protecting us from these cosmic threats. But before we get too carried away with all the possibilities, we have to come back to those ethical considerations again, right?
Absolutely. We can't just rush in and repeat the mistakes of the past. Colonialism, resource exploitation, environmental degradation. These are all concerns that we need to be really mindful of as we venture back to the moon.
So how do we balance the excitement of this new lunar era with the responsibility of ensuring that it benefits all of humanity, not just a select few? It's a tough question.
It is. It's a complex question with no easy answers, but it's a question we have to grapple with. And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. It's not just about the technical stuff. It's about humanity's future. It's about our place in the cosmos.
And if you're finding this as thought-provoking as we are, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We'll be back with part 2, where we'll be tackling these ethical considerations head-on and exploring potential solutions for a truly sustainable and equitable lunar future.
It's going to be a good one.
So we just touched on some pretty heavy stuff right at the end there.
Yeah.
Like the potential for repeating historical mistakes as we venture back to the moon. Our sources, they really stress this need to learn from our past, especially when it comes to things like colonialism and resource exploitation.
Oh, yeah. It's a crucial point, I think. We can't just assume that, this new lunar era is automatically going to be different, that we'll just do things better this time. We have to actively work at it. We have to make a conscious effort to ensure that exploration and utilization of the moon are conducted ethically and sustainably.
Right. And that's where this idea of like a really robust international framework comes in, right?
Yeah.
Like our sources, they talk a lot about the need for clear ethical guidelines, transparency, cooperation, all of those things.
Exactly. We need to be thinking critically about things like planetary protection, how we handle resource ownership, even the potential impact on undiscovered lunar ecosystems, however unlikely those might be. It's about taking a proactive approach to these ethical considerations, not just waiting for problems to rise and then trying to react to them.
I like that, being proactive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like we're writing a new chapter in human history, but this time around, we actually have a chance to learn from the mistakes of the past and do things differently.
Yeah, I like that analogy a lot. We have this incredible opportunity to create a whole new paradigm for space exploration, one that's guided by principles of sustainability, equity, respect for the lunar environment, But it's not going to happen by accident. We have to be intentional about it. It requires careful planning, open dialogue, a willingness to really challenge those existing assumptions that we might have.
Yeah, and one of the big challenges, it seems to me, is navigating the role of private companies in all this, right? Like, we need their innovation, their drive.
Yeah.
But how do we balance that with the need for, ethical oversight and making sure that everything is done in a way that benefits everyone?
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a very delicate balance, for sure. The sources that we looked at, they point to the need for a really strong partnership between the private sector and government agencies. The companies can push the boundaries of what's possible. They can bring that entrepreneurial spirit. But the governments and international organizations, they can provide that oversight. They can ensure that it's done responsibly and for the benefit of all humankind, not just the profit of a few.
Right. And it seems like the Outer Space Treaty, which, we've talked about before, it's a good starting point. But as we said, it was written decades ago, right? Before this new era of commercial space exploration really even started.
Yeah.
So it probably needs some updating.
I think so. We really need to be thinking about how we can adapt existing legal frameworks, international agreements, to reflect the realities of this new space age that we're entering. And we have to be willing to have those open and honest conversations about the ethical considerations, even the ones that might be uncomfortable or challenging.
Yeah, for sure. And we were talking earlier about, the potential psychological and sociological impacts of actually living on the moon.
Okay.
Do you think those factors play into the ethical equation as well? Like, is that something we need to consider?
Absolutely. As we send more and more people to the moon, potentially even having people living there for extended periods of time, we have to consider the impact on their well-being, their sense of identity, their connection to Earth. All of that plays into it.
Yeah. It's fascinating to think about what life would actually be like for those lunar pioneers. Would they develop a new culture, a new way of life? How would their values and perspectives change? And how would that impact, their relationship with Earth and the people who stayed behind?
It's like a giant social experiment, right? One that could teach us so much about ourselves and our place in the universe. It's a journey with so many unknowns. But it's a journey that we need to embark on with our eyes wide open, mindful of the ethical challenges and the immense responsibility we have to shape this new lunar era in a way that benefits all of humanity.
And if you're as intrigued by all these ethical dilemmas as we are, hit that subscribe button because there's a lot more to uncover in Part 3. We'll be diving deeper into some potential solutions and exploring what a truly sustainable and equitable lunar future might look like. Well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive, haven't we? Exploring this new lunar era, the shift from Apollo, the role of private companies now, the potential of lunar resources, the philosophical and the ethical considerations. It really seems like we're on the verge of something big, something truly transformative.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It feels like a pivotal moment in human history, you know? We have this opportunity, maybe even an obligation, to chart a new course for space exploration, one that is, guided by the lessons of the past and a commitment to a more sustainable and a more equitable future for everyone.
And one thing that our sources really emphasized was this idea that it's not just about what we can do, technologically speaking, but it's also about what we should do ethically.
Yeah.
It's about making conscious choices that benefit all of humanity, not just a select few.
Right, exactly. It can't just be about, the powerful nations or the wealthy corporations calling all the shots. We need to ensure that the benefits of this new lunar era are shared widely and fairly.
Absolutely. So one of the key takeaways for me from all this was the importance of international collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it seems pretty clear that no single nation can or should try to dominate this new lunar era. It really has to be a global effort, bringing together diverse perspectives, different kinds of expertise, resources from all over the world.
Couldn't agree more. And that collaboration, it needs to extend beyond just government agencies, too. It has to include private companies, research institutions, universities, and even, the general public. It's about creating a shared vision for the future of space exploration, one that reflects our common humanity.
Yeah, it's a big undertaking.
Yeah.
But, we've also talked about the need for transparency and accountability as we go down this road. Like, as we venture further into space, it seems crucial that we maintain open lines of communication and make sure that our actions are subject to public scrutiny, right?
Oh, absolutely. Transparency is key. It helps build trust, and it also helps ensure that we're all working together towards a common goal.
So, we talked earlier about the need for, like, a really robust legal framework to govern all these activities that are going to be happening on the moon.
Yeah.
What are some specific steps that we could take to actually make that happen?
Well, one idea that's been floated is to, build upon the existing Outer Space Treaty. We could update it, amend it to address the complexities of this new era. We need clear guidelines on issues like resource ownership, environmental protection, how we're going to handle potential conflicts. All of that needs to be spelled out.
And it also seems like we need to establish some pretty clear ethical guidelines for all those private companies that are going to be operating on the moon, right? Like, how do we ensure that their activities are aligned with, those broader goals of sustainability and equity that we keep talking about?
That's where things get a little tricky, to be honest.
Yeah.
We need to strike that balance between encouraging innovation, letting those companies do what they do best, but also ensuring that they're behaving responsibly. Some experts have proposed, a system of incentives and penalties, rewarding companies that prioritize ethical practices and penalizing those that, cut corners or fall short.
That makes sense. And another really important aspect of all this is education, right? Like, we need to foster a global conversation about the ethical challenges of space exploration. And that means engaging not just scientists and policymakers, but the wider public as well.
Definitely. I mean, that's why initiatives like this deep dive are so important. By exploring these complex issues, sharing insights from experts, we can raise awareness and we can encourage that thoughtful dialogue that we need to have as a society.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one message that you really want to leave our listeners with today?
I think the most important thing to remember is this. The future of space exploration, it's not predetermined. It's up to us to shape it in a way that reflects our values, our hopes, our aspirations as a species. We have this incredible opportunity, but also this profound responsibility to ensure that this new lunar era benefits all of humanity now and for generations to come. It's a challenge, but it's also incredibly exciting.
Well said. It's an exciting time to be alive. We're on the cusp of a new era of discovery and possibility. But as you said, it's crucial that we proceed with both wonder and wisdom. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked your curiosity and inspired you to think deeply about the future of humanity in space.